What a finals to kick off the first season in Massachusetts. It is the Mob handing the Reapers their first loss of the season in the championship game by 1 point. A lot to talk about from the fourth quarter. The Reapers had a near 10-point lead, 8 points, 10 points in that fourth quarter. The Mob erase it, get the win. They're the champs. That's what happens in a one-and-done playoff scenario. We have Owen, John, and Elizabeth standing by. I'm getting out of the way. I'm just here for fun today. Wanted to kick it off, but congratulations to the Mob, your summer 2024 champs. Shout out to the Reapers, and the other 4 teams will be back in the winter. The Mob already announced they'll be back. So let's break everything down. We're going to do some all-star previews, but kicking it over to Owen.
Yeah, we got a full house here today. Me, John, Joey, and Elizabeth, which is not normal for us here in Massachusetts, but we're out of the norm. As our first season wraps up, like you said, Mob get a 1-point win in what was a very entertaining final all throughout. You knew that game was going to go down to the wire from the jump, and it lived up to the hype for sure. But we're going to throw it to John first. John, that first half, just talk about the first half and how the teams were feeling each other out and what happened there.
Definitely back and forth in the first half. Reapers led in the first and Mob in the second. Definitely a lot slower paced. They were taking their time to feel each other out. And they were definitely playing some hard defense on both sides. Reapers, especially in the first quarter. But as the game went, they started getting more aggressive, going to the rim. I thought both teams played amazing on defense during that half.
Absolutely. And then Elizabeth, those fouls definitely played a factor in this game. What are the fouls in the first half? Obviously, they weren't big fouls or anything because they weren't in foul trouble yet. But as we saw later in the game, it led to foul trouble. What did the Reapers have to do to stay out of foul trouble?
I definitely think that the Reapers had that aggressive playing style and that caused a lot of those fouls to happen, especially the first half, as you said. There were most people had like 3 or 4 at the most, and then definitely in the second half when Kevin Views fouled out with his 6th, I feel like the Reapers in a way kind of gave up after that happened, but I think that if they kept aggressive, but they didn't have that touch of like get in their face, get on them, and be that aggressive with their like offense and defense, it wouldn't have caused that many fouls, and it would have led to a very different game in the second half.
Absolutely. They played aggressive defense all year long, and it worked in their favor for the first 9 games. And then here in their last 10th one, it hurt them. But definitely a good season overall for the Reapers. They were the best team all year round, and it came down to one game. And like Joey said earlier, one game for the chip. That's the beauty of it. You can play good all year, but you got to finish. You got to cross the finish line sprinting, and they weren't able to do that. But Mob, they get their win, and Joey, you could take this wherever you want. Yeah, the Mob. Talk about the Mob.
Yeah, well, I think it's funny with the fouls. So I'm going to get to three-point shooting in a second because, good God, I don't know if it was nerves, and we were talking about it over there. Like, is someone going to get to 60? And the reason we were kind of having that conversation was because the threes weren't falling, right? If each team made 4 more threes, that's 12 points. That's math. But there you are in the 60s now, right? Instead of a 53 to 52 finish. The fouls, it didn't disrupt the flow because both teams were kind of so choppy by not making the shots, by turning it over, and that's mainly the Mob. I mean, in the first half, we were sitting over there, and it's like they might have 8 turnovers in the first half, and they're in this game. I mean, it was just some careless plays, and you can't do that against the Reapers. Shout out to the Wave in week 1. That was the fourth quarter. I mean, handing the Reapers the ball, and they're so good in that scenario because of their pressure defense, right? And so you're seeing that in the first half, and you're like, uh-oh. Like, this is still a game right now, but if this continues, that's how the Reapers get easy buckets. They get in rhythm. They start making their threes, and that's where it was about to open up as we get into that fourth quarter, and I'll kind of kick it back to you guys. But the three-pointers never came. But in the fourth quarter, the Mob made a couple. Dante Fogel, shout out for a huge, huge one over the defender when they really needed it in the final minutes. Daquan Durham, like I talked about in the postgame, he made a big one, but 5 of 17 for the Mob and 3 of 14 for the Reapers, and it felt like worse than that. That isn't actually that bad because they kind of stopped taking them, which led to more of the fouls, right? Because the teams are like, screw it. If we're not going to make them, which is smart, we're not going to make them. Let's try to get inside, which both teams are so good at. So that kind of gets us to that fourth quarter where, again, it was on the verge of getting out of hand, and a couple shots just weren't falling. Some of the role players, shout out to Asen Lopez, who made that huge one or two from the corner to kind of kickstart the Mob. But in that fourth quarter, guys, let's go back to Elizabeth quick. And then I'll get out of the way again. But in that fourth quarter, what did the Mob do besides make a couple shots? That's the easy answer, but kind of what flipped for them to come back?
I think that the Mob just kind of took a breath when they used their timeouts really strategically. I think that their timeouts, because I think they used both, and they really took those timeouts to just take a breath and talk about a good strategy. So I think that once that first three from Dante came in, they were like, all right, we need to do this. We need to take a breath. We need to get in, and we need to get these shots. And then I remember, like you said, Asen got some threes. I think Daquan hit a few threes and all that. And once they started hitting those threes, they said, all right, let's keep going. Let's take it. Let's get in. Let's beat the Reapers. And I think that using those timeouts really helped them because it allowed them to take a breath, get a drink of water, talk strategy, and it just led to them being able to flip and get that point advantage over the Reapers.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was sitting at the scorers table with Joey, and they took that timeout with like 4 minutes left, and I was like, they're going to need that one later. This game's going down to the wire. That was stupid of them. I thought that at first, but clearly I was wrong, and the Mob, they, like you said, they were able to catch their breath, and that was definitely huge, especially in a game full of foul trouble where it's like, all right, you got to play good defense, but when you're tired, you play sloppy defense. That's just how it goes. So it gives them that minute to catch their breath and be able to play like solid defense without fouling.
Owen, really quick. So on that, I say these games take forever, right? So that timeout, you're like, you might need that timeout. And I know it's the same amount of time in the game. What I mean is it feels like an hour and a half. Like it's a 50-minute, real time duration of the game. It feels like an hour and a half just because there's so much going on. It's the finals. You're so focused. So that timeout actually was super effective for the Mob. And yeah, in the moment, you're like, you need these in a close game down the stretch. But then on the foul trouble, John, it kind of getting to that last 2 minutes, Kevin Views fouls out. And we're not critical of the refs because I think they did a really good job this game. And I mean, what do you expect me to say of all people? But his last couple fouls, they were fouls, and at that point you're in foul trouble. You can't leave it up to another human to not do that, right? Like they needed him. And so, John, in that last 2 minutes when Kevin Views did foul out, the Reapers looked like, and rightfully so, who's going to lead us? And they tried, Jay Sean Edwards on that final play. He bobbled the inbounds. Like, what are the odds of that, right? Like, he didn't even catch it cleanly with 4 seconds left. But even the possession before that, they got an offensive rebound and found him for a cut and a dunk. But the first shot on that possession wasn't even good. The possession before that, like, they needed a bucket in a close game. And Kevin Views, who's one of the best players in the league, is on the bench. But how much did that impact them, John? And from what you saw, not having the clear cut, like, give them the ball and get out of the way in Kevin Views?
Yeah, I agree. It was definitely a momentum shift, and definitely a big strike on the morale for the Reapers. Losing Kevin Views, I mean, Josh Monty Castro and Chayshawn Edwards, they try to keep up with the Mob, but losing such a player like Kevin Views is definitely massive to morale. And I think that kind of, it stuttered their step, and the Mob saw that. Obviously, the Mob played fantastic. But, they saw that and they're like, we're going to capitalize on this. And I think leading up to that final couple of seconds, I think it really led to, Jay Sean Edwards fumbling that inbound pass. So, it was definitely a big morale strike on them.
Absolutely. And I think in that first half, neither team really got into a groove. And then in the second half, the Mob were able to get into a groove because the Reapers were in that foul trouble. There was a couple, I think the fouls were pretty evenly distributed, but I think towards the end, when your best player, Kevin Views, when he gets in that foul trouble, he was never able to find a groove. Whereas like Daquan Durham and Sebastian Delone, towards the end of that game, they weren't really in foul trouble, so they were able to find a groove and play aggressive on defense and offense. And then a huge shout out to, I want to say it was Marcel who took that charge. To give Kevin Views his fifth, and that really just changed the attitude of the game. It was either 90% sure it was Marcel. It might have been Dante Fogel, but regardless, huge charge, great play, and it really changed the game. And that was probably with 4 or 5 minutes left, and that made a huge impact because now Kevin's playing on his last foul and he doesn't want to play aggressive defense, which rightfully so. He wants to be out there to score. And then the mob just had the strategy of we're going to attack him until he's gone, and it worked out perfectly. And now we're crowning them champs.
I'll do it. I don't mind. We've said, and everyone's been very, Kevin's had a great season. You can't foul out. And I think it was on a reach foul, like when they had to foul at the end of the game, right? It wasn't even like, I don't think it was in the flow of the game. Weren't they trying to foul to put the guy at the free throw line too? That's even worse. Like, sure, if you're, playing defense because you have to, and you get caught in the air and they lean into you for your sixth foul, like, it's easy for all of us to say the next day that can't happen. But like, it can't happen. So, I don't mind being critical in that sense. They clearly, by the way everything played out, it can't happen.
I will say, though, despite the loss, Josh Monty Castro, game of the year for him, by far. He came in early and just played the lights out all night long. He really wanted that chip. And obviously everyone really wanted that chip, but the mob were a more cohesive unit, and that's going to get you a chip here in Massachusetts.
Real quick, shout out Daquan Durham, Finals MVP. A couple big plays down the stretch, 2 big free throws. So it took us 12 minutes to get to the Finals MVP, but he'll have plenty of shine on social media. But no, big game from him. I mean, and they needed it with that. Sebastian Delone 7 of 17, Kevin Views 4 for 10, Josh Monty Castro 8 for 17. Like, it was one of those games, and we talked about it down the stretch. The mob, were more effective. And made a couple plays, got a couple big rebounds, which was the other big thing. 32-36 rebounding. So the Reapers did win the rebounding battle, but I think a lot of that was the mob kind of closing that gap in the second half when they needed to get stops and get the rebounds. So shout out to Quan as well. Finals MVP, that's huge.
Absolutely. And now that the finals are over, now it's time for some fun. It's the All-Star weekend next Wednesday. So, or not All-Star weekend, All-Star night next Wednesday. And we got the 3-point contest, the dunk contest, and the All-Star game. We tweeted it out last week, who's participating in each, but we'll start with the 3-point contest. Joey, we have a member in here who's going to be a part of the 3-point contest.
Maybe. I haven't accepted the invitation yet. We will see.
Okay. We have a potential member, but so Joey is a maybe, and we have Kevin Flynn, Josh Monty Castro, Cole Sullivan, Daquan Durham, Finals MVP Daquan Durham, Kevin Views, Nick Bowman, and Anthony Lyons all in 3-point contest. We'll throw it to you, John. Who do you got winning this, and why?
This is a tough one, but I might have to give this to Josh Monty Castro. He's been doing fantastic later in the season, 3-point shooting. Pretty sure he has a 47% 3-point percentage. If not, I have to go with Anthony Lyons. Usually in his games, he can't hit threes in the first half. But then once the second half comes, he's in every three. So it's down to one of those two that I see as the finalists for the 3-point shootout.
Absolutely. What about you, Elizabeth?
I think it's definitely a tough one. I agree. It could be Anthony Lyons. I do, however, want to keep Kevin Flynn in my back pocket. I think there's a chance that he could be like an underdog in this, and he could definitely make it. Because I remember, like, during his games, a lot of the times he'd hit threes really, really well. So I want to say Kevin could come out and win it all. I think if he shows up and he's on his A game, I think he can win that 3-point tournament.
See, I agree. I think Anthony Lyons is probably the favorite. He shoots the best percentage in the league, other than I think someone shot like 1 3 and made it. But for the volume that he definitely has the most threes. But also Kevin Views, MVP finalist. He's also in the 3-point contest. He's made the most threes at 32 throughout the year. So if you make the most threes, I feel like you deserve a nod, at least a chance. But I will say my official pick is going to be Anthony Lyons. And then Joey, you can't pick yourself. But if you were to lose, who would you want to lose to? I guess is the question.
I'm not even gonna make a pick. I'm gonna respectfully decline on the Owen Reed postgame show. But what I will say is it is very different shooting in this contest, kind of picking it up off a rack rather than being in rhythm, like catching it from someone. And it sounds like a small detail, but and we say this every time we have an All-Star night, and we saw it recently. And I just had one in Connecticut. The Rhode Island one is next week as well. It's different, and so some players who are really good in game, in rhythm, catch and shoot, sure, they're still going to perform well in this. It's just different. So sometimes it's a more surprising person who catches fire, who does really well in these, where maybe they aren't, the highest percentage shooter from the season. So something to keep an eye on.
Absolutely. And now, before we jump to the All-Star game, we're going to go through the dunk contest. We have what I presume is the favorite, Terrence Gallo from DTMB. He's going to be out there. Sebastian Delone from the Mob, Jay Sean Edwards, and Keandre Henderson, both from the Reapers. And then we have Ethan Austin from DTMB and Freddie Milligan from the Immortals. They're all in the dunk contest. This time we'll throw it to Elizabeth first. Who do you have winning that one and why?
Oh boy, put me on the hot seat. Oh, I mean, Terrence Gallo is the favorite to win. I think he definitely has a good chance at winning it. Ethan Austin also has a good chance of winning it. I think it honestly depends on, like Joey said, what like the flow is and how it's set up. Because watching some clips, they had to like dunk over people. So it's like I think Terrence Gallo can get the height on that, but if it's like most pizzazz or like most tricks in the slam dunk contest, then I think it's got to go to Ethan. That's what I think.
All right, and what about you, John?
She took the words right out of my mouth. Terrence Gallo, if he wanted to, could probably jump over a 3-story building. We've seen how high he gets up. Everyone else in this, Sebastian Delone, Jay Sean Edwards, they're all power dunkers. They'll slam it on you. But Ethan Austin, if we're talking flashiness, 100% Ethan Austin. We've seen him in games. He's flashy when he dunks, especially when he's with Terrence Gallo. They set themselves up. I would say Ethan Austin is definitely my top pick.
All right, fair. And for this, I'm not going to give a pick because I'm an official judge. Got the word yesterday. But as an official judge, I won't make a biased choice. But Joey, either take a pick or what do people have to know about this?
I love it. I've completely hijacked it. He doesn't even make me make a pick anymore. This is great. No, what I will say is I'm not picking against Terrence Gallo ever. He's a 4-time slam dunk contest champion. Sometimes it comes down to creativity. Also, you have to be able to do cool things and pull it off, but it's also about like how much planning do you just show up and wing it, which Terrence may do to his credit. I'm not saying he's the biggest planner, but when he gets there, he comes up with some good stuff. Worst case, also. Sebastian Delone, Jay Sean Edwards, they're bigger. We have a height limit, so they're not massively tall, and they still can jump with the best of them. But in a dunk contest where it's not in a game where there isn't necessarily a defender there, it doesn't look as good, even though it's still, I'm sure they're going to put on a show in the dunk contest. It doesn't look as good if they do a dunk, and then a Terrence Gallo or even a Keandre Henderson then does the same dunk, just because they're smaller and are jumping higher because they're smaller. To do the same thing, right? So sometimes the visual helps players like Keandre Henderson and Terrence Gallo. So that would be my finals. Ethan Austin's right there. He's not the biggest guy either and can do some cool stuff. So shout out Ethan. And he's done the dunk contest before. But he was a judge last year. One of the two. He's been there. He is aware of the setup, and he will do some planning. If I know Ethan, he will come up with some stuff. We haven't seen any costumes ever. Like, someone taking off the shirt to be Superman, I'm in. Not shirtless, but I mean like having a costume, like Dwight Howard, shout out, right?
Yeah.
We haven't seen that. No one's jumped over me ever, which is shocking. I'm always there. It's like the easy pick, easy points. I don't want them to jump over me. Just some things to throw out there, but Keandre Henderson, Terrence Gallo, watch out.
That was going to be my sleeper pick, is Keandre Henderson. I'm not picking him to win. I'm just saying I like the fact that he's in there because he's a smaller guy like Terrence, and he'll definitely make something look flashy. But now it's time for the main event, is the All-Star game, the last thing until winter here in Massachusetts Legacy Leagues. We got the East versus West, which is all the All-Stars flipped a coin. One's on the East, one's on the West. So for the East, we got Kevin Buse, Taquan Durham, Casey Key, Nick Barry, Freddie Milligan, and Anthony Lyons. And then for the West, we got Ethan Austin, Sebastian Delone, Kevin Flynn, Cody Crawford, Jay Sean Edwards, Josh Monty Castro, and Shaq Audrey. Or Audrey. I always get it wrong. I'm sorry, Shaq.
And Cole Sullivan on the East.
Oh.
That's okay.
Cole Sullivan
Shout
on
out
the
Cole.
East. Sorry. Shout out Cole. He definitely, I think if there was a most improved throughout the season award, which there's not, he definitely would have had a case for that because first couple of weeks, Cole was like, all right, he's a good player. And then towards the end, you're like, oh, wow, this guy's a bona fide star in this league. So definitely going to be a fun all-star game. But John, we'll go to you first. Which team is winning this one?
On paper, I got to say the West. If we look at it, you got Ethan Austin, Sebastian Delone, Cody Crawford, Kevin Flynn, Jay Sean Edwards, Josh Monty Castro, and Shaq. But the East they've got players that can take the game their way at any point. With Cole Sullivan, we've seen him towards the end of the season. Didn't really show up in the beginning, as you said, but he really proved himself to be a star player. Same with Nick Barry, also a contender, I would say, for most improved player. Casey Key and Freddie Milligan always showing up for the Immortals, and obviously Kevin Buse and Daquan, one of the finals MVPs. But I might have to go with the West just on paper. It's just such a stacked team. It's hard to choose. But I think this will be a pretty close game, considering if both teams show up.
All right, Elizabeth, your pick.
I agree with John. I think on paper, West looks better. I am very interested to see how the teammates are really able to shut each other down. Like if Daquan and Sebastian are going at it because they've played with each other. They know each other's playing style. So I'm really interested to see how the teams are able to kind of shut the opposite team down with the playing styles. But I think it's going to be a really close game. I think it's going to be similar to this game. Maybe not as many fouls. Hopefully not as many fouls. But I think it's definitely going to be down to the wire. But I think the West is going to win by 1 3-point that, I don't know, maybe Shaq hits or someone hits a 3 with 15 seconds left and the East just isn't able to get it back down and
Absolutely. I think the All-Star game is all about having fun and making highlights. And I'm just saying, if Josh Monty Castro and Jay Sean Edwards, they figure it out beforehand and they throw a lob and dunk on Kevin Buse, that would get a lot of views. But this game, like you said, West probably looks a little bit better on paper. But I think I also agree the West is going to win. But I don't think it's going to be through the stars. They're all stars. They're all stars. But I think Kevin Flynn, we haven't seen him in a couple weeks. I think we have forgotten how good he really is. I think he comes out here and takes away the All-Star Game MVP. That's my pick. All right, Joey, I'm not going to have you pick, but you should pick.
Well, I first want to get to some inside information. So Cody Crawford's hurt. So most likely not going to give it a go. Should still be there. Talk to him today. Kevin Flynn has declined. Of course, I wait till the end after you guys make your pick. So Kevin Flynn will not be there.
All right, he will not be the MVP.
And it'd be impressive if he was the MVP when he was not there, right? And then Nick Barry also will not be there for the East. Okay, so we still have time, and other people may also not show up. So that's just the first, kind of wave of announcements. What I will say is, hopefully everyone shows up, and I'm sure they will. It's so funny. You look at the teams, you're like, oh, this team's going to win, based on how they should play. It is crazy. Some players play, and everyone shows up and plays and has a good time, but some don't care as much as others. And sometimes it just comes down to caring. I want my 30 today, and then other people kind of feed them. So maybe, for example, if Sebastian Delone is I'm good, here you go, and he's just feeding Ethan, which happens in a normal game sometimes, right? And so Ethan's cool, I'm in. And he's, it's funny to see that dynamic, right? And then hopefully we get a close game, because in the All-Star game, we do a target score ending. So the fourth quarter, if it's 100-90, there's no time in the fourth quarter is the first team to 116 in that scenario. It's the winning team plus 16, which means there's a buzzer beater, right? So if it's a close game, the game ends on a made shot. And so who takes that shot on this team of players who is used to all having the ball, right? And so all of those dynamics are super funny. And yes, there is teammates going against each other. So it's and some players haven't played with other players, right? And so that whole dynamic, but it's usually comes down to who cares the most, and being there helps, right? Physically showing up, but who cares the most will probably impact this game the most.
All right, I'd like to officially remove my All-Star Game MVP pick. Sorry, Kevin. But either way, it's going to be an entertaining night. Be sure to be there. Norfolk 4 Kicks Wednesday night, All-Star night. Thank you. This has been the Massachusetts Postgame Show, and we're wrapping it up. Congrats to the Mob. Congrats to all the other teams for a good season, and we'll see you Wednesday one last time.